Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today I want to talk about SUI for a couple of reasons, but ultimately what we're mainly going to be talking about today is essentially trying to answer the question like, is now a good time to buy in, or should we potentially wait? Now obviously this is not financial advice, but I think the way that to frame this question, it makes a little bit of sense because we've obviously SUI do like a massive run up over the past month or so, and we've started to see a little bit of a pullback kind of from what the local top seems to be. And so I want to discuss like, is this potentially like, are we buying SUI on a discount, or is there potentially further to fall, and how does that stuff usually kind of trend in the past, and how what should we be considering when we're looking to make this decision? Again, not investment advice, but kind of more as like a research aid. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive right in. So starting off, what we can see is overall relative mix in the market. Obviously memes kind of leading the way down. We have a couple kind of moving up, but overall, a pretty strong mix in the market. SUI is actually one of the ones leading the way down. But again, we've seen SUI kind of lead the way up over the past, month or 6 weeks. And so the fact that it's kind of down further than most isn't necessarily a massive concern. This is something that, in my opinion, I would have said was maybe kind of a long time coming, but we'll get into that here in a second. So starting out, let's look at kind of where the chart is. So as I kind of mentioned, we saw local tops of around $2.36. This was about, 4 days ago, 4 days ago. And we've now come down a pretty decent chunk. It does look like we've kind of hit this level of support, and at least so far, if we zoom in a little bit, we can see, we do have potentially a decent bit of buying pressure here. But it is hard to say, at least at this point, if this is going to continue on. If we look back kind of what we've seen in the chart in the past, through this year, obviously, we hit tops in March, which again, this is kind of where we saw kind of a mini alt season. And we saw tops hitting kind of this point of resistance here at about $2.20. And then we came all the way back down to lows of kind of in actually, let's move this a tiny bit. We saw lows reaching under 50 cents. So obviously, this is like a 75-80% pullback here. And now we've seen something very similar. And the question that I'm trying to answer here is this kind of more of like a this type of situation, or is it more of like a this type of situation? And this is something that's really important because obviously, as these types of projects get more hype and attention, it's usually right here when they start to get hype and attention. They never get the hype and attention down here, because at this point, people have already made their money and they're cashing out, and that's why they're getting the hype and attention, is because all these people have made so much money with SUI because they bought down here, right? And so this is kind of the thing that I want to talk about. But before we kind of get into kind of local price action and kind of what we could be seeing in the near to midterm, I wanted to go into what SUI is, how it works. Is this a blockchain that's actually potentially, the next Solana, or is this a blockchain that's potentially the next AVAX or Cardano, or some of these that obviously saw eye-watering growth last bull run, but haven't really kind of seen any of that return to fame. So anyway, that's kind of what I want to start out with. So looking here, we've got the SUI website. We can see this is kind of like their intro to SUI. So we can see basically what they're trying to go for is they actually have created their own programming language called Move. It's supposed to make writing smart contracts a little bit more intuitive and easy for, I think this is mainly all aimed at Web 2 developers and kind of moving that adoption and kind of bringing people onto the network. We can see network capacity, that one of their big things is scaling and getting web level transaction throughput on the blockchain. And so that's another thing that they're looking to do. What we can see here is they do actually have a finance thing, so you can do liquidity and various types of derivatives and options and all these different types of things, very complex order books, stuff like that. And then here we also have commerce, so essentially dynamic AR VR type experiences. Gaming is one that obviously is starting to catch a little bit more mainstream attention, just because a lot of these crypto games that raised very large sums of money in the last bull run, they're actually starting to deliver and ship product at this point. So there's starting to be increasingly more and more attention on gaming. Also, I think there is kind of a larger consensus within kind of the crypto community that crypto gaming could be one of the really, really strong winners of this bull market, just because of kind of how much intuitive sense it makes, right? There's kind of limited and kind of isolated proven concepts of this before. kind of in like a Web 2 world. If you look at like Steam and the Steam marketplace, this is kind of like an isolated, limited version of what crypto gaming could be. And so, think about that, but then like on a greater scale. And I think that's kind of what people are trying to get at when they're seeing some of the potential that the gaming and crypto gaming potentially does have. So that's kind of a quick intro to SUI. They have a couple other things like the ZK login. This is what people are calling account abstraction. And this is really interesting because you don't really have to, you don't have to worry about the 12-word phrase and losing all that and this and whatever else. This is all just connected to your Google account. So, as you sign in with your Google account, it will create a wallet and essentially assign that wallet to your Google account, which makes things, a lot easier for more Web 2 native people, because there's kind of that barrier to entry of figuring out how to use a wallet, what it is, a lot of that stuff. It's all just kind of abstracted away, which realistically is kind of what's needed, right? So I think that's really good. Another thing we can see is there's actually fairly recently, I guess just under 2 weeks ago, we could see that Cointelegraph released an article about the SUI network. Again, usually when people are starting to release articles like this is something that, maybe could be indicative of a little bit of a top check potentially. And the main thing that I want to call out here is a couple of things. So the first one we could see down in this area is basically scalability, right? Scalability is kind of one of the big things that SUI's been hitting on, and SUI has actually been tested to handle up to 297,000 transactions per second, which is massively ahead of Solana, Avalanche, Polkadot, and even some of these other ones. They use parallel transaction processing, which is kind of what happens and helps this out, which is pretty good. Obviously, they've got delegated proof of stake, which is a similar mechanism to what a lot of the layer 2s and a lot of these kind of Gen 2 and Gen 3 blockchains are using nowadays. But overall, I think this is kind of what's drawing a lot of eyes for people, is SUI's actually kind of proven that they can really pull some major throughput. And so I think that's what's drawing a lot of attention here. What I did want to go into, though, is I want to kind of start looking into kind of how does SUI work? What does it look like? What are some of the tokenomics? Is this a good buy at this point in time? Because ultimately, that's probably why the majority of you are here, if I had to guess. With SUI, this is something that we always have to be very, very careful of. Because, right, again, as I mentioned, we saw a really nice run up here at late March, and then we saw things come down, 75% or so. So obviously there is room for us to kind of fall down and see, a pretty significant pullback. Obviously we have seen a significant-ish pullback. Again, maybe not in crypto terms, but maybe more in traditional stock market terms. We have seen, kind of about a 15% pullback from this local high, maybe a little bit less than 15%, but still a decent chunk overall. What we can see is market cap is about 5.6 billion. This is not really too big. I mean, obviously we've got a decent room to run here, but the fully diluted valuation is 20 billion. This is something that is definitely a bit of a concern, because that essentially what we're working with right now is the supply here is only 25% of the total coin supply. You can see circulating supply is only 2.7 billion. There's a max of 10 billion. I am certain that most of this is locked for, VC funding, private rounds, whatever, various level of Series A, B, C funding, all that type of stuff. So we will start to see some very, very significant token unlocks. And when those happen, I'm sure there will be a decent chunk of people looking to sell. Think about Solana after FTX crashed. Think about, I would say, kind of most of these layer 2 chains, Polkadot, AVAX, a lot of these after the bull market of 2021. These all came down 90 to 95%, and that's because a lot of these token unlocks were coming in and people were selling, and obviously there was massive selling pressure just kind of generally from the bad market conditions paired with a lot of these token unlocks coming. So this is something that I think we really need to be cognizant of. Now, that's not to say that SUI can't go run 10x. 10x would be a $56 million market cap. That's kind of just under where Solana is right now. If SUI really does take hold of the narrative and really run with it, I do think we could see SUI 10x. That would put us at a market cap of about $56 billion. Now again, if we were to be at a $56 billion market cap, we have to remember that the diluted market cap would be $200 billion, which is ridiculous, right? There's no way that as all of these tokens continue to unlock, that SUI would actually hold that price. And so we would see a very, very substantial amount of selling pressure as these tokens continue to unlock, because that, I mean, there's just no way that that would continue to hold, right? And so this is something where if you are going to get into a token like this, again, not financial advice, but it's my opinion that if you're going to get into a token like this, especially one where kind of time is working against you, you really need to be making sure that you're buying in at a point of like maximum opportunity, right? I would not call this a point of maximum opportunity. I would call that a point of maximum opportunity, but this not so much. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at when I'm looking at kind of vetting these coins to buy into. This has nothing to say about like the tech of SUI itself. Ultimately, just based on kind of the tokenomics and what we're seeing here, I think this could potentially be a relatively decent short-term play. Again, I might look to see and watch this kind of cool off a little bit and pull back maybe at least to like the 150-ish range. But again, not financial advice. You should do what you want to do, and you should do, you know, what makes sense based on your research. Who knows? SUI could be the ETH, Solana, and Bitcoin killer combined, and then it's going to run to, you know, a $2 trillion market cap. I doubt it, but it could, right? You know, and so this is something that, you know, you just have to do your own research. You have to understand kind of where this coin's place is in the market. Is it decentralized enough? Does it matter? How, you know, what is the developer demand for this blockchain? What is actually building on the blockchain? Is there actual usage sustained? I mean, I know they've proved that they can do 297,000 transactions, but like, what kind of transactions are those? There's a lot of questions to answer here as far as kind of how this looks. And so that's kind of my main overall take that I'm seeing with SUI right now. If you want to go and you do want to trade on SUI and kind of trade some of this movement, we can see that, you know, obviously a lot of this has been, you know, fairly volatile over the past month or so. If you want to trade either, you know, leverage and try and take advantage of some of this volatility and trade more short term, you can do that on WEEX. Also, if you just want to accumulate and buy more, you can buy it through their spot exchanges as well. I do have that referral link in the description below. So if you do want to sign up and get trading, feel free to check that out in the description below. Also, if you would, giving me a like and subscribe really, really does help me out. It does help me grow the channel and reach more people in the YouTube algorithm. I do really feel like this is kind of the point in time where a lot of retail investors and people who are new to crypto can get wrecked, because they see kind of this crazy growth that's happened. People are like, oh, you know, it's only 5 billion, it could 10x, which yes, it could, right? But this is like the picture perfect project, to me at least, of like, yeah, I might jump in to like make a quick 2 or 3x, but I am not marrying my bags on this one. Like, this to me looks very much run of the mill, like everything else we've seen in crypto, as far as like a VC backed blockchain layer, right? Like this looks like all the rest of them. And so for me, like, that's not to say that there can't be money to be made here, but you just have to be very, very careful, and you have to be really kind of playing the timing right. And so anyway, hopefully, you know, if you would giving me a like and subscribe to help push this to more people, to kind of inform them about this type of stuff, would be really, really useful. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, please do drop in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of them. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that would be the best way to do it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.